My girlfriend was raped, and I want to break up with her. I understand how those words sound, and I know that saying them out loud makes me look like the villain in someone else's story. But this isn't about appearances anymore. If I'm going to tell this, it has to be the whole truth. Raw, unpolished, without shortcuts. I don't need protection. I don't need someone to defend me. I need air. And this will be long, because silence has been killing me. It happened a year and a month ago. There were cameras in the parking lot, a bank across the street, DNA tests. All of it sealed the attacker's fate. They caught him the very next day. With all the evidence stacked against him, he didn't even try to deny it, just admitted his guilt to avoid the maximum sentence. 20 years, maybe 10 if he earns parole for good behavior. He's not the threat anymore. But what remained was the aftermath. And that aftermath lived in our lives. She, of course, was the direct victim. I don't compare my pain to hers. I don't pretend that I know what she went through. But what happened after changed us both. And in some ways, it destroyed me too. The first week after she left the hospital, there was nothing. No message. No, I'm alive. No, don't text me. Not even a one-line update. Nothing. Her parents took her in, and the entire world began to orbit around them. I was erased from the picture. I spent nights reading guides online. How to support a survivor, what to say, what not to say. I wrote notes to myself. Don't touch, don't pressure, give her space. Those rules weren't to help her. They were to keep me from falling apart. Because without them, the emptiness was unbearable. On the 7th day, her sister called. Calm, professional voice. She said, "She's at home with us. She'll call when she's ready." She never called. A few days later, another message from the sister. "Come by for a few minutes. She wants to talk." I drove over immediately. Her mother greeted me at the door. Cold, composed, emotionless. She laid out the rules like a lawyer. What I could say, what I couldn't, how to behave. Don't touch her. It's for her safety. We consulted with professionals. I nodded. Who was I to argue? I walked into the room. She was sitting on the bed, pale, curled in on herself. Her father sat beside her. Her sister was on the couch. And when I entered, she didn't speak. She didn't even look at me. It was her sister who spoke for her. She wants to know that you're okay. She's grateful for your understanding. She can't talk right now. My girlfriend sat there silent. I had been given my role, present but invisible. I left that house carrying one thought that burned like fire. Couldn't she have sent even one message? Just one line? I'm alive. But I swallowed it. I held myself in check. She started seeing a therapist. Twice a week at first, then once. A month later, she finally texted me herself. Let's meet at a cafe. I came. She was already sitting at the table. Her face was blank, her eyes hollow, her voice mechanical. The pills had drained her completely. She asked me to come just to say this. We can't be together until I fix myself. I forced myself to nod. I understand. I'll be here. Whatever you need. Space, silence, support. I'm here. When I began to say, I love you, she cut me off sharply. Don't say that. Not now. Respect what I want. It stung like a blade, but I nodded again. The next day she texted, small things. How are you? Watched a movie. Crumbs, but I clung to them like a starving man. Weeks passed like that. I suggested breakfast. She didn't reply for 2 days, then finally, I'll ask my therapist. Eventually she agreed, but scheduled it for a month later. By then, it had been 4 months since the attack. 4 months, and in all that time, we had 2 conversations. One where she told me goodbye, another where her family spoke for her. Nothing else. No updates about her progress. Not even a simple, I'm okay. I told myself, I'm not her husband. I'm not family. I'm owed nothing. But still, was one message, one phone call, really too much to ask? The breakfast came. I arrived early. 30 minutes passed. I texted, where are you? She replied, on my way. She arrived, sat down. I asked gently, how are you? She snapped, don't ask personal questions. We ate in silence. When she finished, I wanted to sit a while. to talk. 3 years of sharing everything, and now we had nothing. I asked her to stay just a little longer. She tensed. I let her go. As she stood, I said softly, "I love you. I miss you." The next day, she texted again as if nothing had happened. And so began our strange routine. Weekly lunches. Slowly, she relaxed a little, stayed longer, said more. She even told me about her new job. I nodded, grateful for scraps. But at home, I sat with loneliness that crushed me. 3 years together, and we didn't even hold hands anymore. One day, she didn't come at all. I texted. That night, after she sent me, "This was the biggest mistake of my life," I agreed to meet. Not because I was ready to forgive, but because I wanted to hear her voice without a mediator, without her family speaking in scripts, without a therapist reciting what I could and could not say. I wanted to face her directly, raw, unfiltered, maybe for the first time in months. I suggested a neutral cafe, something ordinary. She refused. The office is safer. Safer. The word that had become a chain around my neck. Safer for her truth, or for her version of it? This time I didn't come empty-handed. I brought a notebook, pages filled with dates, fragments of texts, and reminders I had written down to keep myself sane. Not weapons, anchors. Something to hold on to when words started to twist into smoke. She arrived exactly on time, composed, neat, the same practiced calm, like someone stepping onto a stage. The therapist began with the familiar mantra, "Let's start with validation. Don't assign blame. Avoid asking why. Stick to facts." I nodded politely. Inside, I was burning. When the two of us were finally left alone, she inhaled, as if reciting lines. "I feel guilty," she began, "but my body belongs to me. I feel stronger when I have choices." "Choices without me," I said softly. "Choices without control," she corrected sharply. "You always want to know too much." The therapist, still in the room's shadows, smiled faintly, pleased with this progress. I opened my notebook and read the words I had written the night before. "Choice does not erase responsibility. I don't want control. I want honesty. Don't lie to me while you're with someone else." For a moment she froze. Then, like a mask snapping back into place, she answered, "You hurt because you can't accept me with my needs." There it was. My pain reframed as my weakness. Her betrayal reframed as her right. After that session, the play left the private stage and went public. Suddenly, mutual friends began speaking in the same vocabulary. Be gentle with your words. Don't trigger her with questions. Don't pressure her for definitions. It was her voice borrowed by others. Her social media filled with curated posts, smiling selfies, clinking glasses, captions like, "Where I feel safe." In the reflection of a restaurant window, I saw him, the coworker. When I asked her directly, she shot back, "This isn't about you." And then the same arsenal of words. "You're projecting. You're interpreting. You're triggering." That night, for the first time in months, I called my own therapist. Not to ask how to endure, but how to speak, how to claim my voice without apologizing for existing. Piece by piece, truths started to take shape. Compassion is not self-erasure. Someone else's trauma does not give them the right to rewrite your reality. Support cannot mean erasing yourself entirely. A week later, she offered what she called a peace deal. "Let's meet without intermediaries. I'm ready to talk openly." We sat on a bench by the river, the place where we once dreamed of road trips and vacations together. She looked at me with that carefully staged vulnerability and said, "I don't want to lose you. I just need more time. No labels." "What label?" I asked. "No betrayal, no relationship, no demands." "Then let me say this without label," I replied. "If we're together, you don't sleep with coworkers. If you sleep with coworkers, we're not together. That isn't a label. That's reality." Her lips tightened. For the first time, her favorite shield cracked. I leaned closer and asked, "Have you ever once tried to accept me as I am? With my right to ask questions? With my right to hold your hand after a year of distance? With my right to know if there's a future for us, or if I'm just a prop in your safe little script?" She stared at me coldly, then played her oldest card. You're toxic. You want control? No, I said. I want clarity. That's not control. That's survival. Days later, I went to her apartment to pick up the few things of mine that were still there. Books, a t-shirt, some photos. I had told her in advance, but when the door opened, it wasn't her. It was him, the coworker, wearing her t-shirt. From the kitchen, her voice floated out. It's not what you think. It's always not what I think, even when it is exactly what I think. 2 coffee mugs on the table, a man's watch by the sink, the same tired excuses. We were just cooking, talking. I fell asleep. Always minimized, always softened, always wrapped in quotation marks. This time I didn't shout, I didn't beg. I just looked at her and said, then call it what it is. Not healing, not safety, not reaction. Call it what it really is. Convenience. You keep me as a spare tire while you drive another car. Her face hardened. Take your things and leave. Thank you, I said. Finally, honesty. The next week, the threats arrived. Not direct, but sharp enough. Be careful what you say to people. Don't make me explain why we ended. Her message was clear. She wanted the story where I was cold, cruel, incapable of supporting her. And she was still the saint, still healing. But I chose my own story. Quietly, simply, I told the people who mattered. Yes, she was raped. Yes, I stood by her. Yes, she slept with another man while we were rebuilding. And no, I won't play the role where my silence is called love. Some squirmed, some nodded. For the first time in a year, I didn't care. My voice was mine again. And then came her final agreement, a message. I want you in my life. We can be partners in healing. No labels, no limits, no demands, I smiled. Not in anger, but in clarity. You've taught me something. Compassion without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Love without reciprocity becomes dependency. And partnership without rules is just monarchy. I'm not your subject anymore. That was the end of the mute version of me, and the beginning of seeing her clearly, not as a victim, but as the ruthless queen of her own stage play. After my message about boundaries, silence followed. But it wasn't peaceful silence. It buzzed like a live wire, tense, dangerous, humming with all the things unsaid. 2 days passed, then out of nowhere. You're right, we need more honesty. Let's meet, but in the office. It's safer. Always that word. But safer for whom? For the truth? Or for her carefully staged version of it? This time I refused to come as the obedient listener. I walked in with my own weapon, a notebook, pages filled with dates, notes, screenshots. Not ammunition, but anchors, to stop the facts from being twisted into fog. She entered calm, composed, her face like a porcelain mask. The therapist smiled at me with that same rehearsed look and repeated the mantra. Stay factual. Don't use the word betrayal. Don't push too hard. Don't ask why. I nodded politely, but inside I had already stopped playing their game. She began with her practiced lines. I feel guilty, but my body belongs to me. I felt stronger when I made that choice. A choice without me, I said quietly. A choice without your control, she snapped back. You always need to know too much. The therapist smiled faintly, as though this was progress. I opened my notebook and read the line I had written at 3 in the morning. Choice does not erase responsibility. I don't want control. I want honesty. Don't lie to me while you're already in someone else's bed. Her face flickered for a moment, then the mask snapped back into place. You only hurt because you can't accept me as I am, with my needs. There it was. My pain reframed as my weakness. Her betrayal reframed as her right. Then came the public campaign. Suddenly, mutual friends began parroting identical phrases. Be careful with your words. Don't trigger her with questions. Don't force definitions. It was her vocabulary transplanted into their mouths. On her social media, curated snapshots, wine glasses, laughter, captions like, where I feel safe. In the reflection of the glass window, his profile, the co-worker. When I asked her directly, she wrote back coldly, this isn't about you, and then unleashed the familiar arsenal. You're projecting. You're interpreting. You're triggering. That night I did something I should have done long before. I called my own therapist, not to ask how to endure, but how to speak, how to reclaim my voice without apologizing for existing. And truth started to fall into place like puzzle pieces. Compassion does not equal self-erasure. Someone else's trauma does not equal permission to rewrite my reality. Support does not equal one-sided servitude. A week later, she offered me her olive branch, a text. Let's meet without intermediaries. I'm ready to talk openly. We met by the riverbank, the place where we once planned trips together, the place where we once whispered about our future. She looked me in the eyes with her staged vulnerability and said, I don't want to lose you. I just need more time. No labels. What labels? I asked. No betrayal, no relationship, no demands. Then let me say this without labels, I answered. If we're together, you don't sleep with coworkers. If you sleep with coworkers, we're not together. That's not a label. That's reality. Her lips pressed tight. For the first time, her shield cracked. I pressed further. Tell me, have you ever once accepted me as I am? With my right to ask questions? With my right to hold your hand after a year of silence? With my right to know if there's a future for us, or if I'm just a placeholder in your little story about safety? She looked at me coldly, then went for her oldest trick. You're toxic. You want control? No, I said. I want clarity. That's not control. That's survival. A few days later, I went to her place to collect what little of mine remained there. Books, a t-shirt, a couple of shared photos. I warned her I was coming, but when the door opened, it wasn't her. It was him, the coworker, wearing her shirt. From the kitchen, her voice called out, It's not what you think. It's always not what I think, even when it's exactly what I think. 2 mugs on the table, a man's watch on the counter, and the same pathetic line. We just cooked. We talked. I fell asleep. Always minimized, always softened, always wrapped in quotation marks. This time I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, Then call it what it is. Not healing, not safety, not reaction. Call it what it is. Convenience. You keep me as a spare tire while you drive another car. Her face hardened. Take your things and go. Thank you, I said. Finally, honesty. And then came the veiled threats. Be careful what you tell people. Don't make me explain why we broke up. The message was clear. She wanted the version of the story where I was cold, cruel, incapable of supporting her. And she was still the saint, still healing. But I chose my own version. I spoke quietly to the few who mattered. Yes, she was assaulted. Yes, I stood by her. Yes, she slept with another man while we were rebuilding. And no, I will not play the role where my silence equals love. Some people squirmed. Some nodded. For the first time in a year, it didn't matter. My voice was mine again. A week later, she sent her final proposal. I want you in my life. We can be partners in healing. No labels, no limits. No demands, I smiled. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. You've taught me something this year. Compassion without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Love without reciprocity becomes dependency. And partnership without rules? That's just monarchy. And I'm not your subject anymore. That was the end of the mute version of me, and the beginning of seeing her as she really was. Not just a victim, but a ruthless queen of her own stage play. When the door closed behind me after that scene, her coworker standing there in her shirt, her voice from the kitchen repeating the same old line, It's not what you think. Something inside of me broke. There were no illusions left. She had pulled off her mask, and she did it with the same cold superiority she always carried. Not shame, not guilt. Arrogance. I went home and sat in the dark. Hours passed. My head replayed the simple math. 1 year of silence, 1 year of rules, 1 year of don't touch, don't ask, give me space. And after all of that, she so easily opened herself to someone else. That's when I realized the truth. It wasn't her trauma controlling our relationship. It was her power. She had mastered the role of the victim so perfectly that every doubt I voiced became, "You're toxic." Every question I asked became, "You don't understand." She knew exactly how to flip the script. Her pain became her weapon, and my silence became the leash she kept around my neck. The next day she called me, her voice trembling, deliberately fragile. "I want to talk. This wasn't about you. It's my battle. It was my mistake." But again, not an apology, not real remorse. Just another attempt to fold me back into her narrative. As if I had to believe that cheating was therapy, that deception was healing, that my silence was proof of love. This time I didn't let it slide. I told her calmly, "Your therapist can dress this up however they want. But to me it's betrayal. And the worst betrayal isn't that night with him. The worst betrayal is the year you erased me. The year you turned me into a background character in a play you controlled. The year you used silence as punishment and rules as chains." There was a pause, then she erupted. "You don't understand anything. You're weak. You couldn't handle it." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. I just answered, "You're right. I couldn't handle it, but not your trauma. What I couldn't handle was your game." And in that moment, for the first time in a year, I felt something I hadn't felt in forever. Freedom. Not happiness, not peace, but freedom. Because all her power over me had been built on my silence. And now I was speaking. That was the turning point. From that moment, our story was no longer about healing. It was about truth. And the truth was brutal in its simplicity. A woman who uses her wound as a weapon, who twists compassion into a leash, will never stop. Because to her, I was never a partner, never someone she truly loved. To her, I was a resource, and resources are always replaceable. The last meeting looked ordinary. A sunny day, a cafe on the corner, a table by the window. No safe offices, no lists of do's and don'ts. Just the two of us. No entourage, no intermediaries, no therapist ready to hand us our lines. I came with a single folded sheet in my pocket. On it were the boundaries I had buried for too long. My terms, my enough. She arrived on time, sunglasses, neat makeup, her expression arranged into that familiar mask of control. She sat down and began in her rehearsed tone. "We both made mistakes. We have to move carefully, without labels." "Stop," I cut her off. "No therapeutic umbrellas today. Just truth. Yours and mine." I unfolded the sheet. 4 points. I won't live in together apart. If we're a couple, we name it and live it. If you want freedom, you name that too and take responsibility for it. No more endless silence. Silence isn't healing if it's used as punishment and control. No more reclaiming control at my expense. If you want other men, that's your choice. But it has no place inside our relationship. Only honesty. Either we speak plainly or we don't speak at all. Her jaw tightened. She tried her usual trick. "You're pressuring me. You don't give me space." "I give you space," I answered calmly. "But I'm finally reclaiming mine." I wasn't shouting. I wasn't lecturing. For the first time in a year, I was simply speaking as a human being, not as a container, not as a placeholder. And that shift carried more power than any accusation could. She smiled, but it was bitter, nervous. "Fine. Call it whatever you want. So what are you proposing?" "I'm proposing an ending. A clear, honest one. We end this today. No public story where I'm the cold, cruel one, and you're the saint in healing. No threats about my reputation. No whispered campaigns through mutual friends. You take what's yours. I take what's mine. And we stop rewriting each other's lives into your script." For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then she lashed out, "You'll destroy me with this decision. You don't understand how hard this is for me." "I do understand it was hard," I replied. "I showed compassion. I stood by you. But compassion doesn't give you a license to rewrite my reality. Your trauma can't be healed by my self-destruction." She tried one last strategy. "If you walk away now, everyone will think you abandoned a victim. And if I stay, I abandon myself," I said. "And I've already done that too many times." We sat across from each other, stripped of masks, stripped of roles. For the first time, she saw, Her power had ended the moment I stopped being silent. Not because I became cruel, but because I became honest. That evening, I went to collect my things, a few books, a shirt, a coffee mug. I left the photos behind, not out of spite, but out of respect for the ghost of what we once were. I didn't craft the story to make myself look perfect. In it, there is naivety, there is weakness, there is shame in my long patience. But there is also something new: boundaries. I sent a short message to the few people who deserve the truth. We've ended it. Yes, she went through hell. Yes, I did too. Please, no sides. I'm not joining anyone's court. I'm simply ending what turned into a one-woman performance with me as the silent audience. Some sighed with relief. Some looked shocked. For the first time, their reactions didn't define me. My life was no longer their stage. Later in my own therapist's office, not hers, not with her rules, I finally said it out loud. For a year, I wasn't just supporting her. I was erasing myself. I betrayed myself in the name of compassion. I let my empathy become a leash. My greatest failure wasn't that I didn't understand her. It's that I didn't understand myself. We broke it down into simple equations. Compassion does not equal self-erasure. Accepting someone's pain does not equal surrendering your truth. Respecting someone else's boundaries does not equal agreeing to your own disappearance. These weren't lessons in cruelty. They were lessons in dignity. She still wrote to me, at first long paragraphs. We can still be partners in healing. Then sharp little stabs. You gave up too easily. Then the casual hooks. How are you? I answered once. Alive. Learning to speak without apologizing for saying I. Then I muted her messages. Not out of anger, but out of care for myself. Because sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for someone else is to stop being their convenient waiting room. The ending wasn't loud. It didn't slam doors. It was the quiet click of a lock turning from the inside. I stepped out into the street that night with empty hands, but lungs finally full of air. For the first time in a year, silence wasn't a weapon. It wasn't her rule. It was mine. And in that silence, I was still here. Present, not erased. That was my ending. Not a victory, not a defeat. Just the refusal to be a shadow in someone else's theater. If some call me cruel for it, so be it. I'd rather carry the label of cruel than live without my own name. Because adulthood isn't about swallowing pain silently. Adulthood is knowing when to walk away from a stage where you've already been written out.